Hey, good afternoon, everybody. It's September 16th. I'm Bobby Wood, and this is Raw to Rageous. And I thought I'd take a minute and just record something that I think I'm going to cover over the next couple of videos. One of the things that my dad and I have done a lot of is research lunar patterns for the last 35 years. We've spent an enormous amount of time researching deer movement as it coincides with various lunar patterns and cycle phases. What we're going to talk about is how those lunar patterns actually affect deer movement. It's been absolutely insane how successful we've been able to be over the last many years because we've applied some basic research data. Several things are going to come into play. One of them is when the new moon happens, not the full moon, when the new moon occurs. There are several aspects of the lunar cycle that are very, very important to deer movement. And one of the things that kind of tripped my dad off on this years ago was that deer movement was often in concert with cattle movement. Hooved animals, split hooved animals to be more specific. Now, what we're going to look at more particularly are things like lunar transit, the moonrise, the moonset, whether or not we've got a new moon or a waning moon or a waxing moon. We're going to talk about things like how the weather affects that. We'll talk about things like what time to go out. You know, one of the things that's been extremely beneficial for us over the years is being able to plan our vacation time. If you're anything like we've been for the last several decades, we've only got so much vacation time. We've got to use it pretty sparingly if we're going to maximize our opportunity to take animals out of the field and bring them home to our table. Something that used to just fascinate me with my dad when I was younger, a teenager still at the house, even in college. I come from a big family. I've got several sisters, I've got several brothers, and invariably during the deer season, my dad would, at some point in the day, and it didn't really stay a set time, but at some point during the day, Dad would get up out of his lazy boy recliner, get up from the TV, and say, "Boys, it's time to go on a meat run." And it became kind of a trigger statement for us to jump into gear because most of the time, Dad would go hunting and come home with an animal that day. Now, like I said, I was completely fascinated by this and how he would do this. It's just some innate ability almost. What I found, and as he and I began to research this more consistently together, was that he was following a pattern that I wasn't fully aware of yet, but it was extremely effective and it was extremely successful, and very consistent. As a kid, one of the things that I was always concerned about was getting enough time out in the field. What I found was that the timing could actually be planned based on lunar movements and based on weather patterns that were coming in, front movements and things like that. Those are the easy parts. Those are the things that everybody talks about. But one of the things that just absolutely affects everything is how that moon moves. And I'll give you an example. Several years ago, when I lived in one of the south central states, I was following this. I was doing additional research year after year after year. What I decided to do was very carefully and very meticulously plan a few days of my vacation around this lunar cycle and this targeted lunar pattern that I believed was going to materialize. What I wound up doing in that state, you could limit out with 4 animals the entire season that year. I was very blessed and very fortunate to apply what I'd learned, blessed by heaven, and I tagged out in 4 days. It was amazing. And what I want to do is I want to be able to share that information with you because it is a game changer. It's like game cameras. This is a game changer. If you will apply what I share with you, it will change the way you hunt. And honestly and truly, it will give you more time at home and certainly more productive time in the field. One of the common misconceptions among deer hunters is that the rut typically occurs about the same time every year, and I'm here to share with you that that is not true. It's not. There are some things that come into play that will move over time when that rut cycle happens. Now, it will repeat, but it'll take a couple of years to do that. We're going to talk about that because the lunar revolution is key to it. One of the things that I'd really like to share with you right now is that you need to mark your calendars right now for these 4 dates. And I've got them written down. September 28th, 2019. October 28th, 2019. November 26th, 2019. And December 26th, 2019. These are the dates of the 4 new moons in the last trimester of the year. They're going to be key. I will actually plan my vacation around these dates, and I'll tell you why very soon. All right, everybody, so I'm off work now, which is exciting. I'm on the highway. I'm stopped at a stoplight, and it just turned green. I am trying to record some of this while I'm driving. That's probably not the best idea. So as I turn away from the lens, as I turn away from, focusing on the screen here, understand I'm trying to stay between the ditches, as my dad would say. Anyway, so a basic science lesson. We were taught in early science years in school that there is a gravitational pull that the sun has. There's a gravitational pull that each of the planets have. And it's for that reason that things stay in orbit. It's the reason the Earth stays in orbit. It's the reason the moon stays in orbit around the Earth. On a new moon, the light side of the moon is opposite or pointed away from the surface of the Earth, meaning it's pointing generally the same direction as the sun is from the Earth. And so you have a greater gravitational pull from the sun than you would otherwise. The moon reacts to that. Livestock reacts to that. Animal life reacts to that. The tidal patterns respond and react to that. It is a legitimate thing. It's something to be mindful of because it absolutely has an effect on what happens in the world around us. So, when the new moon is away from us, it doesn't just happen at nighttime. It happens in the daytime too, but because of the sun's presence, you don't always see that. You don't see the moon traveling across the sky on a new moon. Add to that notion this. If it's at night and it's a new moon, it's going to be very, very dark. The sun is going to be out of visibility, and the moon will be out of visibility as well. Now, deer don't just navigate with the usage of light. They obviously have other senses. They use their nose. They use their ears. They can get around. But you know what? They don't carry flashlights. And there is a limitation at some point. And so the ability for them to see at night, just like us, gets a little tight once in a while. Now, how many times have you heard somebody say, well, the deer have gone nocturnal. I haven't been seeing them in days. I haven't been seeing them in a couple of weeks. It's true. They do go nocturnal. And there's a little bit of science to that too, but we're not going to dwell on that right here, right now. The truth of the matter is, deer like to be able to see what's going on. Think about it. When you're up in a tree stand or you're in a blind, are they not rotating their ears all over the place? Yes, they are. But that's not the only thing they're doing. They're also turning their head and trying to isolate and see and visualize anything and everything that's moving around them. Everything that they hear. They will typically use their ears first and then their head. Not always, but often. Very, very often. So, there's a reason why deer on a full moon are often found out and about. It's because they can see. It's bright. Now, if you're anything like me, I like to know when they're going to be out in the daytime. I can't hunt at night. Can you imagine how amazing it would be to be able to predict when deer will move. And not only when deer will move, but when the core of the rut will occur. Year after year, consistently and consistently and consistently. It is possible. It has been done. It can be done. And what I want to be able to do is share with you how that happens. And here's a case in point. I feel so confident about this based on everything that my dad and I have researched, that I can have a solid feeling for when the rut will occur for the white-tailed deer in my area 2, 3, 4 years from now, because the lunar cycle is completely predictable. Now here's the thing. I'm not asking you to take my word for it. In fact, you don't have to. This may just be a decent video where some other guy is talking about a way that you can harvest white-tailed deer. That's not what my purpose is here. My purpose is to help offer information that will help you be more productive in the field and be able to harvest animals that can put meat and protein on your table more consistently. Now, what I haven't done yet is share with you what the motivation was for my dad and I to figure this out and to spend all the time that we did trying to test this and test that and see if that worked and so on. Well, the reality is I'm the oldest of 10 children to my parents. My parents have been married 50 years. It was one of those cases a long time ago during the Vietnam War when my mom was married at 16, my dad was married at 18, and just as soon as they got married, Dad went off to war, leaving my mom. In the years to follow, we'd have all of these kids, and Dad only had a 2-year trade school degree education for practically the entire time I was home. Now, he would later go back to college, and I'm thrilled for him for that, because he was able to see some great things accomplished, some goals met, and that's a celebration all by itself. But the reality is we had a massive family, and we had a lot of mouths to feed. And Dad desperately wanted to make sure that when he spent time away from the family, that it was going to be worthwhile and productive. He loves to hunt. I love to hunt. We all love to hunt. That's part of it. But the truth is, we go out so that we can bring home something for our families. Now, the older people get, kids get into school, they get into activities, and the demands on a parent to be at those activities continues to grow. And when you've got a lot of kids, it becomes a conflict very often as to what you're going to do, when you're going to do it, and how you're going to go about it. Now, I've never been exposed to a household or a home or a family that at some point didn't have an argument during deer season. Well, you're always out in the woods and you're never home, or why can't you just be here with us this weekend, or and you know it, you've seen it, you've been exposed to it, and if you haven't yet, I promise you, you will. So how neat would it be, how cool would it be to be able to predict when those times would be that are going to be most beneficial for you to be out in the woods? What would it be like to, in the middle of deer season, to sleep in on a Saturday morning, or to go out into the woods after the sun comes up, after everybody's already left their tree stands and left their blinds? I'm telling you, it's absolutely possible. In fact, if you want to see your highest success rates and ratios, you really need to do it. I remember the old days, the early days in all of this, all too well. How easily I remember the notion, well, if you're not in the woods, you can't shoot something. And that's true. But how often have I spent time in the woods and didn't see anything for hours, for days on end? How often have you done it? How often have you heard people doing it? Well, if you can utilize that time for a better purpose because you're not really at risk of compromising your hunting success, how incredible would that be? I can honestly tell you that I have encounters with deer about 75 to 85% of the time that I go out, because I follow the model that I'm going to share with you. Now, I'm going to cut this video down here in just a minute because I'm going to break this up into several different pieces. In this segment, I've already given you the dates of the new moons that are slated for the third trimester of 2019. Now, I want to take a step back and go back to that window of time of 4 days several years ago in a state in the south central United States, I'll call it Arkansas because that's where it was at the time, that I limited out 4 deer, 4 days. Oddly enough, at that time, some of my greatest and best friends who I hunted with were not seeing deer for literally the previous 10 days to 2 weeks. They hadn't seen hardly anything. They were going out early in the morning and they were going out late in the afternoon and doing the typical thing that hunters do who have the time and have the chance to do so. Now, oddly enough, every single one of those deer I shot in the middle of the day between 10:30 and 2:30 in the afternoon. 10:30 in the morning to 2:30 in the afternoon. You won't usually find very many deer hunters who are out between those hours. And those that do are typically there for the duration of the day because they've got very precious time and they're trying to take advantage of every minute and every hour that they can spend in the timber. Time is precious, everybody. And if there is a way to make the best use of it and still bless and benefit everybody involved, then that's going to be a great thing. This will bless and benefit your hunting success rates. It will bless your family because you will be able to spend more quality time with them if you choose to do that because you'll make it available. It's one of those things that will occur. If husbands and men, you're the ones that are doing the hunting, then your wives and your girlfriends and your partners, they will love you for this. Ladies, if you're the ones doing the hunting and your husbands or your boyfriends or the men in your life are not doing it, then they will love you for this. Your children will love you for this. And they'll be a little more compassionate, a little more understanding about you doing it because they will see your success rates climb, given the time, the ratio between your success and the time that you're actually gone. So with that, I'm going to call this one a wrap. You're watching Raw to Rageous, and I'm Bobby, and we'll see you next time.